Thank you, Marshall, and hello, everyone. Today is February 11th, 2026. This is the Wednesday CalPADS Q A, and my name is Matt Clark. I'm a data governance administrator at CSIS supporting CalPADS, and I'll be hosting the Q&A today. Driving documentation for us is Paul Higgins. In terms of announcements, I do have a few for folks today. First up is the CalPADS reporting calendar, and we're currently in the Fall 2 data submission. The error-free buy date for Fall 2 was last Friday, February 6th. So this is the date that trends show that LEAs who successfully certify high-quality data in Fall 2 will have had 0 fatal errors. So if you have remaining errors, you may expect a communication from your CSIS monitor, and we recommend working with your monitor to resolve your fatal errors as soon as possible. Fall 2 has no amendment window and only a single deadline of February 27th this academic year. Second announcement, CalPADS Flash Update number 320 was released on Monday, February 9th, with guidance regarding CalPADS and the Consolidated Application and Reporting System, or CARS, which is used to report school-wide programs. Flash 320 contains guidance on deadlines, reporting requirements, reminders, and helpful resources for the CARS submission. Alignment between CalPADS and CARS is critical to preserving the data integrity in the new end of year 1 submission in CalPADS. And then final announcement on my end, the CalPADS service desk will be closed on Monday, February 16th, in observation of the President's Day holiday. The CalPADS system will remain online, and the CalPADS service desk will resume operations on Tuesday, February 17th. In addition to announcements, just a quick reminder that registration for the Data Governance Academy virtual check-in session occurring next Thursday, February 19th, as well as the March regional update meetings occurring on March 3rd and 4th are currently available on the CSIS training registration page. So please do go visit the CSIS training registration page and register for the courses that are relevant to you. The intended audience for the Data Governance Academy virtual check-in is executive level leadership, CalPADS administrators, differentiated assistant staff, and data governance professionals. The target audience for the regionals are CalPADS administrators and CalPADS staff, but registration for the regionals does take place by region, and the counties included in each region are included in those cards that you see there. Thank you for showing those, Paul, under more information. So please register for the regional update meeting in your region. And that was it from me today. Angela, any announcements on known issues, defects, or deployments to share?
Yeah, we did have a deployment yesterday, so the active and fixed known issues is current as of this morning. And that was all I had today, Matt.
All right. Thank you, Angela. And Brandy, any announcements from the CDE side?
The only thing I did want to say is we this week the Special Education Division released its annual determination letter. And along with that, for the very first time, we provided SELPA directors with lists of SSI. Judy, you're funny. A list of SSIDs of students that were non-compliant for timeline. So they had timeline non-compliance. So if your district received an annual determination letter and you have counts of non-compliance in that annual determination letter, you want to know who the kids are, contact your SELPA. They have a list of those SSIDs. So please just start there first before you send in a ticket, please.
All right. Thank you, Brandy. And just a quick note that we should have Dominic on the call today, but he is going to be joining a little bit late. So he should be here, just not right here at the top of the call. But let's go ahead and jump into the questions now. And we have a Q1 from Kareem at 302. I noticed that we haven't been reporting some pupil service staff for quite some time, but there's never been any repercussions or feedback. Do you know what happens with this data?
I do know that it's used for federal reporting.
Yeah,
right?
I was going to say, Paul, if you pull up the CSIS website. And under resources, or actually just click on the search, the magnifying glass there, and type in consequences. Everybody should have a copy of this document. It's very handy, and it shows where the data is used. Did you spell it correctly?
There's a C in consequence. Oh, there.
Spelling test,
Thank
Paul.
you. Spelling was not my strong suit. Great vocabulary, terrible spelling.
He's also got a philosopher mind, so so if you scroll down a little bit, there's a section for Fall 2, and so it's EdFacts at the federal level, DataQuest at the state level. Don't know if it's used in SARC. It's been a while since I've looked at a SARC.
But one of the things I can tell you though is that are the folks that do submit the EdFacts files to the U.S. Department of Education. The U.S. Department of Education does flag these particular areas where LEAs are not reporting any, like sometimes we see no counselors, no nurses. We see no administrators. So the U.S. Department of Education does flag those categories. And, the CalPADS office would have to speak to whether or not they're actually looking at reasonability validations for whether or not there's no administrator. And I thought we had a validation for that for certain types of staff, but pupil service staff, I'm not sure whether or not they've got a validation for that or plan to do that. But just know that the U.S. Department of Education looks at it.
In chat, Shelley says they are, but they're warnings. They're not fatals.
Got it. Well, because sometimes, particularly for small schools, they use itinerant staff that are employed by the district. But the other thing that you need to remember is if the district employs, let's say, a counselor, and that counselor serves several schools within the district, remember that assignments are to be reported by FTE at the places where they are assigned, which means if you have a counselor servicing 3 different schools within the district, they should have assignments at that school split by their FTE split up accordingly.
Right. Thank you, Brandy, and thank you, Angela. Thank you as well, Kareem, for the question. Next, moving on to Adriana's question at 302 Q1. We have an adult education principal whose responsibilities are strictly limited to adult education. My understanding is that she should not be included in the Fall 2 submission, so I have removed her staff assignment and staff demographic records. The system is now requiring me to enter an end date to clear a fatal error. But she was reported last year, and her duties have not changed for this school year, strictly adult education, which indicates that she should not have been reported last year either. What end date should we use? All right, and then Paul has the relevant guidance pulled up from the CalPADS user manual there for the Fall 2 reporting roadmap. And the staff who should not be reported in the Fall 2 submission include certificated employees in adult education or preschool. So if it's a certificated employee in adult education, go ahead, Paul.
Nothing. I was just going to move after your statement, giving us the nice umbrella there. I was going to zero in on her question about how to do that and what date to use. And just use any date prior to census day, but I would say make it clean break at the academic year. So even if there's any bleed over into end of year, there's nothing present in this academic year. So make them, separate them at 6/30/2025, make it a clean break for the academic year.
Thank you, Paul. And thank you, Adriana, for the question there. Moving on to Natasha's Q1 at 3:02. For attendance recovery calculation, 90 minutes would count as 1 full hour, and the extra minutes cannot be banked. Would two 90-minute sessions in one calendar day count as 3 hours? So 90 plus 90 is 180 minutes, which is 2 hours, or count as two 90 minutes rounded down to 1 full hour plus 90 minutes rounded down to 1 full hour equals 2 hours.
Don't know that we have any SMEs on that topic on this call, so that one might be better suited for a ticket.
All right. So Natasha, please do submit a ticket. It also sounds like there are other LEAs, possibly Hemet Unified, where Kareem is coming from, that have experienced similar scenarios. So your fellow LEAs may be of assistance as well. All right, moving on to Jennifer's Q1 at 3:03. How does CalPADS determine FTE for staff? I guess quick caveat, CalPADS does not itself determine the FTE for staff. The FTE is input by CalPADS folks into the system, and the calculation is typically done by HR. We don't recommend that CalPADS coordinators calculate the FTE themselves. We recommend that you reach out to your HR departments and have them provide you with the FTE percentage of your staff members.
Matt, can I also piggyback on that, because there's a little chat going on underneath that where Jennifer clarifies. She says we have multiple SPED case managers who are listed as teacher 12 and itinerant teacher for their pull-out assignments. So if you work with your HR staff, they're going to tell you they're 100% teacher. Okay, they're 100% FTE, but in this case, you have to take a look at the assignments for the teacher and how many of them are managing a classroom and instruction in a classroom versus how many itinerant, and you would have to split that 100% FTE between those two classifications.
Thank you, Brandy.
Yeah, no problem.
And thank you, Jennifer, for the question there. Moving on to Carrie's question at Q1 at 3:03. I'm getting an SDEM 196F2 for a staff member that has a new legal first name and gender. Is there a way to resolve the error before submitting, or do I just submit with the warning? And Paul's pulling up the SDEM 196F2. Mismatch of C demographic for staff information update.
I think it's okay to just certify with that warning. It's not going to prevent you. But Brandy, I don't know how much experience you have with working with CTC. Is that something that they would be able to update if the teacher notified them of those changes?
Would CTC be able to update the staff person's gender and legal name? You know, I honestly, I don't know what their process is. But here, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's just comparing with prior records in CalPADS. It's taking a look at their demographics in CalPADS, and it's comparing, so it's comparing prior records.
Oh, I was assuming it was some kind of reference table that we had.
Wait, let me see. Mismatch of C demographics. No, I just think, so we do have a reference table, but every teacher in CalPADS has a seed. And so if that seed, the prior demographic record has a different name, and in this case, gender, it's going to trigger this error. So it's not related to the information on CTC.
Got it. Okay. So next year, that warning will go away because it'll be looking at this year's data.
Yeah. I mean, and technically, if you wanted to, it's a local decision, but if you own those demographic records, you can update them all.
Thank you, Brandy and Angela and Carrie for the question. Moving on to Q1 from Alejandra at 3:05. I have a preschool student that is primarily enrolled at our LEA with the preschool program. They have another primary enrollment with our LEA, and I got the overlapping error. I contacted the site staff, and they told me the student attends the elementary school in the morning and the preschool program in the afternoon. How do I code this? Who would have primary enrollment?
I mean, the first thing I would say is you should probably send in a ticket or contact the attendance accounting to see if this is even allowable. Can a student be both in a preschool program and an elementary school at the same time? So
In a lot of ways, preschool might be considered a grade level, and you can't be in, for example, first and second grade at the same time. So you would think there's a high likelihood you wouldn't be able to be enrolled in both
Could it
kindergarten and a preschool.
could it be preschool and the students who
Okay.
participate in the expanded learning program?
that I don't know. That I do not know. But it would be interesting to take a look at. I mean, that's why I'm saying like submit a ticket
Yeah.
because you take a look at the grade levels for this student. If one of them is TK or kindergarten, is it allowable for them? Because what this sounds like is a daycare situation. That's what it sounds like to me. Let's put them in school the full day.
Yeah.
So-
So please do submit that ticket, Alejandra, and we'll have some fun investigating what the rules are on our end. All right, next we have a Q1 from Cindy at 3:06. We're receiving an SENR 439F1 error. Adult age students with disabilities in transition status is required for this record. I've read the error list suggested resolution, but I'm struggling to find the field located in Aries and or Synergy. Any help is greatly appreciated. Oh, and then she responds, I think I answered my own question. It can be defined in Aries in the CalPADS extract. So we can't provide any Aries expertise. We can't provide expertise on any of the vendor systems, so the student information or special education systems. But it sounds like you were able to find a path forward. All right, moving on then to Carla's Q1 at 3:06. Regarding the all teaching assignments must have a course section enrollment record rule. If an itinerant PE teacher is linked to a course section record, such as 9310, does that record alone satisfy the reporting requirement? We're looking to verify if the 6020 non-classroom code is necessary in this scenario, especially since it often triggers automatic CalSAS exceptions for teachers who are effectively in a classroom-based role. I'm a newbie in trying to figure out why our LEA was reporting these teachers with a non-classroom-based job code. It seems a bit redundant to me, that's all. Well, welcome to the CalPADS world, Carla.
You want me to try and answer this?
I think I would trust you more than myself in answering this.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true. Okay. So in this case, the fact that this student is a teacher, this person is instructing students, means that they need a course section. So I would say yes, use 9310. The fact that they're itinerant doesn't matter. They are instructing students, so they need a course section record. Never, ever, ever report 6020 for a person who is instructing students, who is a teacher. Whether they are pull out, push in, itinerant, they need a course section record. 6020 should only be used for non-instructional staff, okay? That word non-classroom based, again, and I'll say it, I think I've said it a couple times on here. The non-instructional or not classroom based or support assignment name, that code set, was intended to mean non-instructional assignments, but people really focus on non-classroom based, and pull out, push in teachers don't have a classroom. So they must go in that file. right? But in this case, the non-classroom based or support assignments really are non-instructional assignment. So the only time you would use a non-classroom based or support assignment for a teacher is if that teacher is on special assignment and they're not providing instruction. And we actually have a teacher on special assignment, a TOSA code in the non-classroom based assignments. But in this case, you're right. 9310 would work for that itinerant teacher and that would suffice.
All right. Thank you, Brandy. And thank you, Carla, for the question there. Moving on to Yolanda's Q1 at 3:08. Received an email stating probe failure for the CSIS listserv as of today. I've received a total of 10. Are there issues with list.fcmat.org or the listserv server? I haven't heard anything. Has anyone else on the CSIS side of things heard any rumblings about the listserv?
Just what was posted on the listserv, but I haven't received any probes myself. Just a couple people on the listserv said they got those. All day, they said, okay. I will notify our tech team and see if they can find the root cause of that.
All right. Thank you, Angela. And thank you for bringing that to our attention, Yolanda. Or at least my attention. All right, next we have this looks like a Q2 from Jennifer. So Jennifer, we're going to come back to the Q2 and I'm moving on to Q1 from Ethan at 3:09. If we have a student currently in juvenile hall for greater than 30 days, is their enrollment record and their enrollment record is now primary instead of short term due to being that long, is it okay or appropriate for us to exit the student to avoid a CCE and the absenteeism?
My understanding of that process is if they're going to be in there for more than 30 days and you know it up front, you as the LEA have the option to, of course, hold their seat, hold their course schedules, hold everything for as long as you want. But if it does go beyond 30 days at that juvenile facility and their short-term enrollment becomes primary, yeah, you're sitting on a CCE, and it would behoove you to release it to resolve the CCE so it doesn't count against you in any fall one calculations. And if it's going to last greater than 30 days, you probably want to free those seats up for those courses. Obviously, that's internal decision, and Brandy can correct me on that, but I think that's where we landed on that some time ago, right?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, what should happen, so the juvenile hall technically could keep that short-term status for as long as they wanted. There's nothing that forces them to change that. But the district where they came from, it's probably in your best interest to go ahead and exit the student. There are also ways, depending on which student information system you use, there are ways for you to actually keep the student enrolled if you think that they're going to come back relatively soon, even if it exceeds 30 days, to keep them enrolled but not attending, right? So you can keep their schedules and everything so that when they come back, so you could technically exit them in CALPADS, but they're enrolled, they're just not attending at the moment.
Yeah, and I found the scenario listed in the SSID enrollment procedures document, page 23. That document is available in the footer of CALPADS. There you go, that one.
Thank you, Angela and Brandy. And thank you, Ethan, for the question there. Moving on to Chantel's Q1 at 3:16. What is the exit code if a student goes into a treatment facility? They will have 3 hours a day with a teacher at the treatment facility.
I know there was a flash on this on Home Hospital. It's an older one, but it's good to see you too. Yeah, and I can't remember, where's Joe Tan when you need him? He knows all the knows all the flash numbers, but it was one on a home hospital from
One
it,
148.
maybe, yeah. Because this is actually when I was still in the CalPads office, so it's probably not on this page.
It's pretty old. If you want to Google CalPads Flash 148, Paul.
Is there an exit E410 medical reasons?
There is, yeah, they can use that, but when you're talking about a student that goes into home hospital instruction, um, this is exactly it. So there's different scenarios, and it tells you if the district and resident should keep the student enrolled and a secondary enrollment at the in the district where the hospital is located. So I would I cannot remember all of these different scenarios because it's been a really long time, but I would strongly urge you to read this flash. But there is the option of that exit code, which is 410. But I would ask you to read this first before you make that decision.
Thank you, Brandy. Taking us in the Wayback Machine for a sec there. All right, next we have a Q1 from Alex at 317. Just want to clarify the process for reporting an employee on leave for the whole school year. I will close the demographic record on the day before Census Day, report a staff assignment record with a code of 6018, and not report a course section enrollment.
If you're closing the SDEM record prior to Census Day, then you should not be adding SAS data. So if you're going to keep the SDEM record open, you have to put that 6018 SAS record on there and then figure out the course data, how it's reported, and there's an FAQ on that.
294.
Sorry?
294.
Flash 294.
Yeah.
FAQ.
Oh, FAQ. I was thinking flash.
Oh, I
gonna
thought
say.
which I thought you were saying the FAQ number, Gary.
No, hold
No?
on. Now I'm all bunged up here. Hold on. F. Where we at?
Yeah, and she's saying she got that information in 294.
Yep. Because if they're not the teacher of record for the year, then what she's saying is right. You just exit them before Census Day. No SAS, no course, no nothing, and then you can put them back in after if they come back when they come back. But that's what the flash says.
Right. Thank you, Gary and Paul. All right, moving on to Shelly's Q1 at 317. If I have two students that are TAs in one of my school offices, and I had reported them under a counselor and received an error, so I changed the staff to my assistant principal and am still getting one. But the AP was reported 100 FTE AP. Should I submit the AP as an additional 0.10 FTE to make the error go away?
So I think the issue, so Shelley, when you say you're getting an error, what error are you getting? Is this a CalSAS exception or is it a CalPads error? It's a CalPads error. Which one is it? Because bottom line is, for CalSAS perspective, the person that those kids are assigned to has to have a credential based on a BA in student teaching. If they have an admin credential for assignment monitoring purposes, you may have an issue if you're assigning them to an assistant principal and that person doesn't have a credential based on a BA in student teaching. Okay, so, but if it's CALPADS error, we need to know which specific CALPADS error you're talking about, so we can. And if it's because you're trying to report an administrator as assigned, I think I know what this is. So if that person only has an administrative classification, but you're using that person's seed in a course section, CalPADS is going to give you an error because they don't have a teacher assignment. Now, you can create, like you said, the 0.10 FTE of a teacher for that admin, but if they don't have the appropriate authorizations, it's going to result in a CalSAS error. So just beware of that. Is that articulating your issue correctly, Shelley? Okay.
She says yes, thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you as well, Shelley. Okay, moving on to Alex's Q1 at 317. We have a student who left the state in 2022 with an IEP, and their student with disability status is eligible and not enrolled, not expected to return. The student returned to California, but the parent checked the no IEP box in our SIS when enrolling. We still don't have physical records, so we don't know what happened out of the state. Is the parent indicating there is no current IEP sufficient to update their students with disability status to reflect they are now not eligible as of the date of enrollment in the district? Or do we need to get the specific date that the student was found no longer eligible?
You're on mute, Brandy.
Sorry about that. In this case, if they left the state in 2022, just remember that every 3 years, students with disabilities have to be reevaluated. So if there's an indication that the student was a student with disabilities based on their prior records in CalPADS, but the parent is saying that they don't have an IEP, it would always be a good idea, particularly if the parent cannot show proof that the student was exited because they're no longer eligible. It would be a good idea for you to conduct a reevaluation for this student. So conduct a reevaluation, in lieu of having any paperwork from the prior district where they were, and determine whether or not the student's still eligible for services. If the parent, by the way, can decline to consent to the reevaluation. And then because you don't have information indicating the student's eligible or not eligible or was exited, the other thing is you just need to be mindful that a student with disabilities has a right to service. So it would probably be a good idea for you to ask for, if the parent wants to revoke consent for special education and services, then ask the parent to revoke and provide a prior written notice.
All right. And she followed up in the thread. If it's been less than 3 years, would you recommend the same?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Brandy, and thank you, Alex, for the question. Next, we have a question from Leticia. I don't believe I've read a question from Leticia yet, so I do believe this is a Q1, but this is a reminder. Please put Q1, Q2 before your questions in the Q&A box. But Leticia asks, I have a question regarding vacancies. The site principal is filling in for a vacant teacher position. Should the teacher position be reported as a vacancy?
Well, you don't really report vacancies, right? In this case, there's no teacher of record, is what I'm hearing. Go ahead, Matt.
Right. So you don't report any, you can't report staff as vacant staff. You report staff who are employed at your LEA and have seeds, and that's the set of staff that you report to CalPADS. The term vacancies does show up in the code sets for course section records. If the if there is a vacancy in the teacher of record. If there is a vacancy in the teacher of record, though, you would report the teacher teaching the course on census day. So if that was the principal, you would put the principal's seat as the teacher of record for that course.
But just remember, for assignment monitoring purposes, the administrator has to hold the appropriate credentials to be able to teach that class. Otherwise, it will be a misassignment. Just FYI.
So make sure your principal has the credential. All right. Thanks, Brandy. And thank you, Leticia, for the question. Moving on to Larney's Q1 at 319. With all the discussions going around regarding degree of support and special education teacher credential, I had thought that the degree of support monitoring will not start until next academic year, 26-27. Did that get changed to start this year?
So the monitoring in CalSAS is starting this coming August, but it's based on data that we're requiring for the 25-26 academic year. So we're requiring that students have the degree of support populated if they meet one of those categories. So first of all, they're in kindergarten through 12th grade, and their primary disabilities fall within the areas of disability that require either an extensive support needs or mild moderate support needs authorization. Okay, so and there is some guidance that I believe it's in the user manual that tells you which of those disabilities it is. That has to be populated. It should have been populated in fall 1, but there is an opportunity to populate it for students through fall 2. Okay, so right now we're at on the 11th of February. If you've got students who are enrolled on census day that have those primary or secondary disabilities who are K-12, then make sure they have a degree of support indicated, because that will be used for assignment monitoring this year in August in CalSAS.
All right. Thank you, Brandy.
Yeah.
And thank you, Larney, for the question. All right. Again, I don't believe I've read a question from Lucia yet, so I'm going to read this as your Q1, but please put Q1, Q2 in front of your questions there. But Lucia's question at 321, can a CTE arts and media teacher teach art in a TK through 6 setting? District setting is considered a pull-out elective. It does not contribute to the student's academic credit hours and does not impact their grades as the class is not graded. They intend to report this using CALPADS code 7200. Is this doable?
So the first thing I would tell you to do is what you're trying to figure out is what credential is required for a particular course. So if you're using 7200, what I would advise you to do is go to the appropriate codes, appropriate assignment, or appropriate CalPADS codes for assignments. It's a CalSAS website, the CTC.
I can put it in the chat.
Thank you, Alex. There we go.
Oh, Angela beat me.
There we go. All right, so Paul, if you want to navigate there. Okay, and so if you want to type in code 7200, let's see what pops up here. Oh, this is the wrong one. This is the non-classroom based codes. We need the one for the course codes. Appropriate credentials for.
Use the link I put on the chat.
Yeah.
Oh.
This is for non-instructional assignments. It's okay. There we go. All right, 7200. All right, so 7200. This is a CTE course, okay? And what they're looking for is if what you're asking is, can you have a CTE course in an elementary setting. Typically, we don't see CTE courses until minimally middle school. This is probably art. This is an elementary art teacher. And so if you look in the course, if you type in the course title, so remove the 7200 and then type art, and it's probably like visual art, let's just say. Yeah, art. You'll see all the course codes that align with art, and there's a whole bunch of them. It's in the 9000 series, so there we go. So we've got a whole bunch of art courses. It very likely aligns with one of these courses in the 9000 series, in which case it's very likely that your CTE teacher is not going to be authorized because they will need a single subject art credential.
And
But-
if I, oh,
Yeah, go ahead, Alex. Go ahead.
I was just going to add that we also have the valid code combo, which tells you the standard grade level range that you can use for each of the state course codes.
Mhm.
And if you were to look at 7200, you cannot use elementary state course or standards grade level range for that course.
Those are typically 912 standards that are taught in those courses. So it's really not a CTE course in the elementary grades. So tell them not to use 7200 because it's not appropriate for those young kids.
Right.
You passed it. It's a course group standards grade level. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's this one. It's the standards grade level range combo. Two down. There we go. Right. So if you look at 7200, it's going to tell you that there's secondary standards 912 and sometimes middle school 5 through 8. So you might be able to get away with like the 5th and 6th graders, but definitely not TK. This is like an art class. Sounds like an elementary art class.
All right. Thank you, Brandy, and
Yeah.
as well as Alex and Paul and Lucia for the question. Moving on to Q1 from Kathy at 323. For 6th grade teachers with a multiple subject credential, teaching departmentalized classes at the middle school, is there an added step to add for 6th graders so these teachers do not end up on the exception report for not having the proper credential? To clarify, added step to add for 6th grade courses using the 9000 series for departmentalized courses.
Okay, so here's what this sounds like to me. What this sounds like is a middle school core setting. Okay, so I'm not going to get into all the nitty gritty about middle school core. What I can tell you is on the CTC's CalSAS website, they have some really good resource materials about what a middle school core is. Okay, but essentially a middle school core is a local assignment option that allows teachers that are teaching kids in grades 5 through 8, or they're teaching 5 through 8 standards, courses 5 through 8, and if they have a multiple subject credential, what it allows them to do is teach the same group of kids multiple subjects within the same day. So, for example, if you have a teacher that has a multiple subject credential and that teacher teaches math and science to the same kids within the same day, that is called a middle school core setting. And so if that's in fact what's going on here, Kathy, what that means is all of the courses that are part of that teacher's core, meaning all the departmentalized courses that they're teaching as part of the core, need to be identified as middle school core courses. Okay, so there's a specific field in the course section record that allows you to identify those departmentalized courses as part of the teacher's core. Now, really important here, it has to be the same kids in the same day being taught those two departmentalized subjects. They do have a little bit of flexibility for students with IEPs that get pulled out of certain classes, but generally the rosters in those two departmentalized courses have to be the same. There's also, I said I wasn't going to get into the nitty gritty, but just one other thing. I promise I'll shut up. There's also the ability to have what's called a hanging fifth period. I don't know why they call it fifth period, because it may be a different period. But what you're allowed to do is that teacher can also say they're coring a group of kids for math and science. There's two math and science courses, it's the same kids. And then for periods 3 and 4, you have two different groups, another different group of kids that are receiving math and science. And then you're teaching one period of math to a set of students that have the same grade level as all of the other core. That standalone math class is considered what it's called a hanging fifth period. But all of those courses, as part of it, need to be identified as part of that teacher's middle school core. As long as that's Y, then what it'll do in CalSAS is it will have the monitoring authority verify the rosters of the middle school core. And if the teacher has a multiple subject credential and the rosters are the same, the grade levels are the same, then you are good.
All right. Thank you, Brandy.
Yeah, no problem.
And we got some shout outs in chat. We never want you to shut up, and this is very educational for everyone. So all right. Moving on then to Kareem, I see your Q2. Well, I'll come back to it. Moving on to Rocky's Q1 at 326. A little more about the 60/20 code. If a teacher is not teaching a class at all at the site on census day, but is doing actual non-instruction items until they start a class later in the year, would the 60/20 create an exception if EOY has classes for that teacher? For clarity, this teacher works at 2 sites within the district if it matters.
So it really depends.
Hey Brandy, as
Yeah.
you get started,
Sure.
one question up from that is Kareem's Q2 asking for a deep dive on the 60/20. So if you wanted to merge the two questions, you could probably kill two birds, one stone there.
Sure. So the first thing I want to address is the fact that what you're capturing in the staff assignment record, or the non-classroom based or support assignments, or what I'm calling non-instructional assignments, are non-instructional assignments requiring licensure or certification. That's the first thing. My first question about this particular assignment is, if you've got this teacher not teaching a class and they're doing non-instructional items, my question is, are they in a classified position? Doesn't matter that they've got a credential. It's great. Because in Fall 2, what you are reporting are positions requiring assignments, requiring certification or licensure. And that goes for course section, and it also speaks to staff assignments that are non-instructional. Do they require certification? That's the first question. If the answer is no, and it's a classified position, no, don't report them, right? 60/20 is the catch-all code, because we did a revision of those codes back in the 2019-20 academic year. And or maybe it was before that, I can't remember. I'm getting my dates mixed up. But we significantly reduced the number of non-classroom based or support assignment codes, because we just had way too many and they were not helpful. But we do recognize that there may be some positions in your district that require licensure or certification that are not classified, where you have an individual in that assignment that don't align with any of our codes. That is when you use 60/20. It's only a last resort when you don't see any other codes that align. The problem with this is that typically people are using 60/20 for things like itinerant teachers who don't have a classroom, or pull-out or push-in teachers who don't have a classroom. It's not appropriate, right? You only want to use 60/20 for non-instructional assignments that are certificated. They require certification or licensure, and none of the other codes that we've provided in that code set align with what this is. And then I would even urge you at that point, if you can't find anything, because we hate 60/20, by the way, we hate it. Send a ticket in and say, hey, CDE, this is the job, and I don't find anything that aligns with this. So, maybe you guys want to consider adding this to the code set, right? Because we only have codes based on what you guys have submitted in the past, and we don't have a text box asking you to explain what this other is. So that's another option.
All right, and I think that definitely answers Rocky's question. Kareem, can you give me a thumbs up if that's the deep dive you were looking for as well? All right, moving on to Q1 from Anna at 327 for special education end of year reporting. Post-secondary goals and transition services must be in place by the student's 16th birthday. Is the birthday cutoff June 30th or their LEA's academic year end date, if applicable?
It would be June 30th. So if the student was 15 years old and the academic year ended on June 10th and the student turned 16 on June 29th, we're going to be assessing the plan in place for the student when they're 16 years old. So you would want to make sure, even if they're 15 at end of year, if they're going to turn 16 before the next academic year, that the plan in place has those goals.
And just remember, you got warnings about this, or actually it was fatal, right? No, it was a warning for fall 1 that basically said if the student's going to turn 16 by the end of the year, they're going to be 16 by June 30th. You need to make sure that the transition plan is, or you have to have something in there.
Yes.
It could be yeses or nos, but you have to have something in there. So you got a heads up on kids that need those transition plans in place by June 30th.
They were fatal.
Oh, they were fatal. Mm-hmm. But you had to have something in there. It doesn't mean you have to have the transition plan right now. It just means that the fields have to be either yes or no.
All right. Thank you, Brandy and Dominic and Anna for the question. Moving on to Q1 from Lisa at 330. In our high school district's ADL, there are a number of students identified as non-compliant for indicator 13, transition questions. In looking into these students, it seemed as there was an incorrect answer, may have been some years ago. For example, the 24-25 school year. When the student turned 16 years old, but the or the 24-25 school year when the student turned 16 years old. But the answers have since been corrected in more recent years. So there is no way of correcting these, or am I missing something?
So this actually just came up in a training we hosted. As long as the subsequent plans have the transition elements in place, that's considered the corrective action. So as long as that's been put in place, the student would not appear on the prong 2 pool.
Right. And so the one thing I wanted to say is you guys need to keep in mind, particularly for indicators 11, 12, and 13, we're using prior year data, and we pulled those data as certified in the end of year submission. Okay. And so if that student has since had their transition meeting and those plans are in place, then that's essentially the corrective action. What we want you to pay attention to is those kids who still show that no transition plan is in place. Those are the ones that we want you to pay attention to.
With both Brandy and Dominic here, we're really living the dream for special education questions this afternoon. All right, next up is a Q1 from Chris at 348. To confirm, the data pulled on December 15th for the ADL included meetings that were overdue on Census Day and remained overdue on December 15th, correct? Or does it also include meetings that became overdue after Census Day?
Just a slight correction, it would have been December 12th, but any timelines that became overdue after Census Day would not be included in your ADL.
So what for the ADL, we pulled students that were enrolled on Census Day, and here's the key. Their plans were late as of census day, and they were still enrolled, and their meetings reflected that they were still late on census day when we pulled the data on December 12th. So it was the December 12th date really is irrelevant in terms of was the meeting late as of December 12th. We're looking for kids who are enrolled on census day whose plans were late as of census day, and based on the meeting information we pulled on the 12th, they're still late. There still isn't anything that's been corrected. So I hope that makes sense, Chris.
Thank you, Brandy. And that does bring us to the end of the questions. And we are pretty close to the 4 o'clock hour here. Got a couple minutes left. I think that's probably enough for Angela's question at 3:58. So reposting Larney's Q1 since she had to step away momentarily when it was answered. With all the discussion going around regarding degree of support and special education teacher credential, I had thought the degree of support monitoring will not start until the 26-27 academic year. Did that get changed to start this year?
Yeah, so in CalSAS, the monitoring technically starts in the 26-27 academic year because their monitoring cycle starts in August. So, but the requirement that it be populated in CalPADS was as of fall 1, 2025.
Thank you, Brandy. And that brings us to the end of the questions. Let's go ahead and call it here. So thank you everyone for attending the CalPADS Q&A. We hope we were able to provide you all of the guidance that you need. If we didn't get to answer your question, please submit a CalPADS service desk ticket and we'll provide guidance specific to your scenarios. We will be back next Wednesday, so we will see you then. But as a reminder, the service desk, the CalPADS service desk is closed on Monday. So you will not receive responses to service desk tickets on Monday, February 16th.